my friends in US as well as good evening to all my friends back in India. I welcome you all for today's webinar. The topic is related to women entrepreneurship myths and facts. As a process flow for this webinar, we will request you to switch off your speaker phone so that we can avoid unwanted disturbance. And then I will be quickly going through our speakers as a brief introduction part. And then it will be followed up by the question answer session and the screenshot. Today's session it will be anchored by Professor Dr. Orijita Dotto. She is a professor and current head in the Department of Economics in University of Calcutta. She is an alumni of Center for Economic Studies and Planning, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and University of Calcutta. Professor Datta research interest is in health economics, quantitative development economics, as well as applied econometrics. Lately, she has started working on entrepreneurship as well as in impact investment projects. She has many publications in her name, both in national as well as international journals. She has completed many research projects funded by Indian as well as international funding agencies, including IGC London, ICSSR New Delhi, UGC Asiatic Society, etc. She has been closely associated with health policy for our own state of West Bengal, as well as she has published many policy documents regarding healthcare schemes in state of West Bengal. She has taught in a number of universities across the globe and has been a visiting faculty at University of Le Havre, France, UNU Merit, Maastricht, the Netherlands, JEF, University of Bonn, Germany, and Yamaguchi University, Japan. Currently she is engaged in a project funded by US Department, which is known as Global Link Impact Investment Forum, related to development of women entrepreneurship in India. So with this, I want to uh, convey best wishes to Professor Arjit Datta to take on further proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mojumdar, for this kind introduction. So, good evening and good morning to all of you. And without much delay, I would like to directly go to the presentation and share screen for the Sanchari, you will have to allow me to share the screen. Sanchari?
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute. Yes, ma'am. You'll be able to now. Thank you.
So, can everybody see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I start with the presentation, which is more of an kind of a status report of women entrepreneurship and the backgrounds. And I talk about a few facts and few myths as well. So my today's topic is women entrepreneurship myths and facts and positioning GLIIF. And I think this has been representing the entire team GLIIF. And you can see our logo and our partners for this program, this project. So at the onset, first let me talk about that entrepreneurship ecosystems comprise of a number of interconnected elements that are mutually reinforcing and, sorry, and um, there's been some problem. So it's they are mutually reinforcing and facilitating innovation and growth of entrepreneurship. So what is important that it consists of an ecosystem. And by nature, this ecosystem is dynamic. And the actors and institutions are independent in their own way, but they are influenced by each other and they in turn influence others as well. So entrepreneurship ecosystems include a conducive culture, available financing, the acquisition and development of human capital, new markets for products and services, and a range of institutional and infrastructural supports. So that is actually nicely depicted by this quick graph, this flow chart, that all these actors are actually dynamically and mutually reinforcing each other, which is resulting in the entrepreneurial growth. Now, the question that next comes in, that why women entrepreneurs are different. And underlying most entrepreneurship ecosystem frameworks that has been already developed, the main assumption is that all the entrepreneurs have equal access to resources, participation, support, and the equal chance of successful outcome. However, the reality is different. And the reality is the fact that ecosystem factors such as regional culture, gender norms, or economic context, such as country level income, may differentially affect women's perceptions, intentions, and motivation. It also affects the industry choice where the women participate and growth aspirations and potential. Why I also focus on industry choice is the fact that women entrepreneurs are overwhelmingly participating in very, very gender stereotyped sector. Like in India, they participate in either in apparel making or in making of handicrafts or producing the very women-friendly products like pickles, papadums, etc. So this entire ecosystem also affects the industry choice. And hence, even if there seems no dearth of capabilities among the women, they are handicapped and constricted in creating successful entrepreneurship ventures because of the differential ecosystem that they work upon. Now, continuing with this, as part of the social norm and culture, particularly in the low income countries, women have less access to resources and empowerment to follow her own aspirations, which seriously limits the ability of women entrepreneurs. As it is, walking outside the household is not always welcome in societies characterized by low social status of women. We all know about this, and particularly those who live in any South country understand that there are certain social norms that women should stay inside the house and work for the household chores primarily, and rearing the children rather than participating in any kind of entrepreneurial activities. Thus, the barriers seem to be more for them while giving less access to the enabling environment around that ecosystem. Now, with this, I move on to a few facts and a few mythbusters. So the entrepreneurial activity, a gendered version. Now, first, let me define the total entrepreneurial activity, or TEA, which represents the percentage of adult working age population, that is between 6 to 31, who are either in the process of starting a new business, but have not paid wages for more than 3 months. They are called the nascent entrepreneurship, or have businesses older than 3 months, but younger than 1 month. They are the early stage business activity. So basically, this is the total entrepreneurial activity. And when we mean that, it's the new entrepreneurial activity that is supposed to that is supposed to come forward in the near future. Now, globally, the average rate of women's total entrepreneurial activity is 10.2%, over 3/4 the general rate for men's TEA. So that means that women's TEA is just above three-fourth of the men's TEA. So definitely there is a gender differences, and women TEA is lower compared to the men TEA. Now, here comes the myth number 1, that low-income countries show the highest TEA rates for women at 15.5% compared to only 8.4% women's TEA in high-income countries. So those who live in low-income countries like India, we always have a perception that in the high-income countries, the women's participation in the entrepreneurial activity is far higher. So that's my first myth that I would like to highlight. Now, this graph actually talks about what I just mentioned, and you can find that the TEA, those bars are far lower in Europe and Central Asia. In North America, it's still higher than Europe and Central Asia, but you can find that it is highest in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is supposed to be the poorest region of the world. Definitely, men and women there are difference, and in all the regions, and I stress the word in all the regions, we find that women TEA is lower, significantly lower than the men's. Now, here I must add, however, among the low-income countries, India and Egypt have very low TEA for the women. So this is a kind of an outlier, that even being low-income countries, India and Egypt have very low TEA for the women. Moving on to the motivation of entrepreneurship, we find around the world people are prompted to start businesses mainly for one of the two general, though they are not necessarily mutually exclusive reasons. What are they? The first reason is that they do not have any other means of economic support or employment. And the second one is because they are pursuing a business opportunity. So one is a kind of a forced environment, that since they do not have anything else to do and they need the economic prosperity, so they go for entrepreneurship. And the second one is they go for entrepreneurship because they see a kind of a business opportunity and they have the potential to work upon it. So TEA rates typically decline with higher levels of national income, as I have already pointed out, as does the likelihood that those who start businesses are doing so out of necessity. So as the national income increases, the share of the TEA who go for the businesses out of necessity increase, while at the same time, with high levels of national income, the opportunity motive increases. Women are disproportionately more likely than men to report a necessity motive in most countries. So globally, 27% of the women entrepreneurs reported starting a business out of necessity compared to 21.8% of men. So those who are reporting that they are joining the business because it's out of the compulsion, out of the economic pressure, that is significantly higher among the women entrepreneurs. This is actually also presented nicely by this graph, which shows that necessity motivation, which is represented by this color, this saffron color. You can see that as we move to more, there is lowest in Europe, this North America has 9%. And on the other hand, we have in Sub-Saharan Africa, it's 42%, whereas East and South Asia has 23%. So that's the kind of differences that we find across the globe. Now, among all reporting countries, India has the second highest share of women TA, while the global average is 27.2% and low-income country has 37%. So you can understand that out of compulsion, it is a very large share, almost half of India's women TA are going for this out of necessity kind of thing. And this is a very important understanding that in India, even if they are among the low-income countries, but the women entrepreneurs joining entrepreneurship because of serious economic pressure that is out of necessity is one of the highest globally. Now, looking at the trend, we find that women's necessity-driven entrepreneurship rates were up overall for low-income countries by 11% and for middle-income countries by 7% compared to 2016-17. By the way, I forgot to mention that my source of these graphs and figures is the GEM, that is the Global Entrepreneurship Monitoring and Monitor, and it has been taken from the latest report of 2019. And in this trend, high-income countries show, in fact, a 3% decline in the necessity motive and hence a corresponding increase in the opportunity motive among the women entrepreneurs. Now, coming to the individual characteristics of women entrepreneurs, what we find that younger men and women are more inclined to engage in startups in all countries, particularly in low-income countries, while startup activities are more prevalent among older adults in higher income countries. Now, this trend is likely correlated with the motivations, necessity versus opportunity, and the fact that older adults are more likely to have resources of themselves to apply to a new venture in higher income countries. What is also striking that women with less education are more likely to start businesses regardless of the income level of the country. So wherever we go, we find that the women with less education are moving to the entrepreneurship. And on the other hand, when women are more than highly educated, that is more than secondary education, they're generally less likely to start a business, except in low-income countries. So there lies the difference between high income and low income countries, that whereas in general, the low education, less education women do move for entrepreneurship, but in low income countries, even those with higher education, they also, they are generally less likely to start business, except in low income countries. So it is possible that motivations, opportunity, and necessity are also factors explaining these differences. And at the same time, women with more education in business income, in high income and in middle income countries, may have more options for employment. So you can find that women with more education in the high income countries and also in middle income countries have other options, like they can get better employment opportunities and options. Now, what is interesting to find, I come to the myth number 2, that the average global rate for business discontinuance is lower for women. And it is 2.9% compared to the 3.2% among the men. The women entrepreneurs are generally known for strong survival skills, perhaps as a result of more conservative approach to business strategy or due to industry context in which they tend to run businesses. And they also have a higher tolerance for more modest profit margins. There's a kind of a noise coming. Can I request those who are not talking to please mute themselves? Thank you. Now, coming to the innovation, globally, women entrepreneurs are less innovative, indicating more risk averse compared to the men. But here comes the myth number 4, that Indian women entrepreneurs innovate highly. And this is actually shown by this graph, again from GEM, where it shows the offers new products significantly different from others in market. And there you see where India is positioned here. So it's on the towards the right of our entire graph. So it's though in general, the women have less tendency to innovate new products and processes, but on the whole, we find that in India, that's a myth. Women do innovate a lot in India. So they have the tremendous potential as well. Finally, coming to the last section of the presentation, which is access to finance. And this is one of the most crucial factor for limiting entrepreneurship. So gender-wise, women-owned small and medium enterprises face more credit gap than its male counterparts, with the gap accounting for 96% of the potential credit demand. So what is very surprising to and very striking to find that women-owned small and medium enterprises, in 96% cases, they do not get the access to formal credit. And identified demand-side issues for non-compliance of MSMEs with collateral requirements, time-consuming process of loan transaction, and complicated documentation. On the other hand, supply-side issues are bureaucratic nature of banks, high dependence on collaterals and credit appraisal tools favoring large firms. It is therefore important to address both these concerns equally and above towards more to convert to a swift and efficient credit guarantee process. I'm not explaining DFS right now. These things will be covered in the forthcoming webinars for the scholars. So these are the programs that we have, and in spite of the credit guarantees processes where the central government guarantees for the credit, we find that MSMEs, and particularly the women-owned MSMEs, in most of the cases do not get access to formal credit. So here is the snapshot of what is the status of women-owned, this is the MSMEs in India. And what we find that dominance of MSMEs in Eastern India. So I have chosen here to present national average, Assam, Odisha, and West Bengal. And out of them, there is an overwhelming share of the micro enterprises. You can see small and medium, their share decreases. What is interesting to find that compared to national average, these 3 eastern states have significantly lower shares in medium range, while it is 0.14 in for national average, it's like 0.07 and 0.06 in Assam, Odisha, and West Bengal. In Odisha, the share of small enterprises is one of the highest, and in West Bengal, it's 99.06 is actually in micro enterprises. So coming to the last slide of access to credit, what we find here, I give the male-owned MSMEs, and this is the female-owned MSMEs. So, and this is Assam, Odisha, West Bengal, and the national average. I can help you to read these tables like this, that in Assam, out of all male-owned micro enterprises, only 2.08% had access to formal credit. The figure is 1.59% in West Bengal. And what is interesting, that in the small segment, And again, into the medium segment, the access to credit definitely increases, particularly for the male. So it's 2.08, 15.50, and 21.77. The picture in West Bengal is probably the bleakest, where we find that not more than 7% or 7.5% of the medium enterprises owned by male have access to credit. Now, coming to the female-owned sector, you can find the situation is pretty bad in the East Indian states, where we find, compared to 22.56% of the medium enterprises in Orissa, which are male-owned, receiving credit, the comparative figure is 5.80 for females. And for West Bengal, the figure remains abysmally low. And that is what is represented here. Now, what is the takeaway from these two tables parallelly is that the access to formal credit is very low in the micro and small sector, and it is particularly worse in the women-owned enterprises in all these three eastern states. So at the end, while summing up, we conclude that it must be acknowledged that women entrepreneurship activities by women is one of the lowest in India. Juxtaposed on this, the majority of women opt for entrepreneurship driven by necessity, and they often fail to even recognize the enabling environment around them. The overwhelming majority of women entrepreneurs operate under micro category, and most of them as self-employed. And lack of access to formal credit is the biggest barrier for them, and this definitely calls for important interventions. So here comes Glyph, and at the end of the presentation, I position Glyph as at a unique situation where, given the entire situation in terms of women entrepreneurship and access to credit for the women entrepreneurship, Glyph, as it has been explained time and again to all of you, it is uniquely positioned to help those micro enterprises, women-owned micro enterprises who have the potential to access to credit so that they can prosper and they can become more socially and environmentally responsible. I stop here.
Thank you, Professor. We already have questions in the chat box. If you'd like to have a look at them in the WhatsApp and answer.
Yeah, I'm just. Yes, just a moment.
Professor, if you want to stop your share, we'll be able to see all
Yes,
of the.
that's what I'm trying to stop.
If you, there's should be a drop down where it says Zoom at the top of your computer. Move your cursor up to the top of your computer and it should.
And that's what I'm struggling with right now.
Well, don't worry. Sanchari, can you, as the host?
Sanchari, can you help me to stop?
Ma'am, I'm trying to withdraw the permission and
Yes.
hopefully it will automatically.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I've done it. Stop share. Okay. So now I will move on to the questions. Is there a contradiction in the idea the female entrepreneurs in India are innovative and the fact that they are so concentrated in gendered industry sectors? maybe a little contradiction, but what I find, what may be the possible answer to this is a very good query, in fact, that if when they are gendered, they are working in the gender stereotype sector, yet they are innovative. The figure that I showed, showing that they are innovative, that is not industry specific. I am not exactly sure that whether they are still innovative in these particular sectors, but on the whole, yes. And I think that even working within this gender stereotyped segments, being innovative is a big showing their big potential, and that is what we will try to improve on their capabilities. Moving on, how does a woman's social capital influence her likelihood to become entrepreneur and her potential success? See, social capital has a big role to play, because in most of the cases, as I said, that access to formal credit is very narrow for women entrepreneurs, small women entrepreneurs in India. So they normally turn to their social capital to fund their enterprises, and in most of the cases they receive the funding to start the business, as well as for the working capital. They get the finances from their family and friends. So social capital definitely makes a lot of difference. What are the biggest obstacles that women entrepreneurs face while gathering finance for their business? I give the particular direction to this, that first, they in most of the cases when they are micro enterprises, not very highly educated, so their awareness for the government, formal sector, government support is often not very high. And also, even if they have that knowledge, the paper processing and the getting the registration done at the government level, often these are very challenging for them. So also they when in the credit market, when they go to the formal banks, from the bank's perspective, they cannot prove their own potential. And in many cases, the banks ask for specific collateral. And in 90% cases, they do not have any collateral to offer. They have their own knowledge, their own particular skills, and maybe their in most of the cases they do not have any asset, any physical asset to be used as collateral. So that's a big hindrance, that they cannot offer anything for collateral, though Government of India has floated the scheme for collateral guarantee to be given by the central government. But even then, we find that the banks are not very open to give credit to these entrepreneurs. So that's a challenge, definitely. In terms of credit access, why West Bengal situation is worst, this is something I am doing my research rightly to find out that what exactly is the problem. I just shared the snapshot of the status. I am yet to find that what exactly is not working in West Bengal, and where is the problem, where does the problem lie. So I'm sorry, I really cannot answer this question at this juncture. And how should women entrepreneurs tackle the customers and other male employees of our business, as we Indians tend to underestimate women, especially in terms of business? So yes, in terms of social configuration and the social acceptability, there is often a challenge, but we have also seen very, very successful women entrepreneurs coming out, coming in India, particularly in the MSME sector. This would depend on her particular abilities to handle, and of course his empowerment process within her household and also outside the household, her social and economic empowerment process that she has gone through, that would make a little bit, that would help her how to handle in this male-dominated world. I have met personally women entrepreneur who works on security agency. Her work is to provide security personnel, and you can understand how completely male dominated this sector is. But we have found that when she was sharing her life story, she was telling that initially it was really a big challenge to handle the security men. But with some experience, she finally got over, and she's from Malaysia. I met her in Malaysia, and she had said that over the years I have improved my skill, and now she is one of the most successful medium level entrepreneurs who has won national awards. So this will come naturally to some people, and that is what will make them a more successful entrepreneur. I think that's what we have in our chat box, what I have been supplied the questions.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you everyone for making the session really interactive. We are looking forward to meet you in the next webinar on Friday by Professor Mary Convedato on. So that will be an interactive session, a more interactive one, we hope. And you can also come up with suggestions and any queries and write us at info@theredcliffe.in. While having said that, I would request everyone or the one who are willing to turn on your videos so that we can have a group screenshot and make this webinar a memorable one. So if you please.
Olivia, as you get